I sent him these group of tracks back in 2017, and he was like, yo, these are so fire. He's like, will you open up for me like at a show, that I have in a couple months? And at that show that I opened up for him for, the my agent was actually in the crowd that night too, like for the show, and that's where he initially discovered me as well. So it was crazy. Like, that's how I got in the music industry, and that's why I kind of tell like other people too, like, it's all about networking. Like, if you want to make it as a musician, you got to go to the shows, and you got to meet people and make those connections. And like, the artists and promoters, they know who goes to their shows all the time. And if you become a recognizable face, it will be that much easier when you like reach out to them on social media and stuff. So, and like, yeah, I think that's how I got in the music industry, was just by going to shows and meeting people. And it was like really cool. Yeah, like he was just such an integral part, like not only introducing me to the music industry, but like helping design my logos for me.
You're listening to the Freio Music Podcast.
To the Freio Music
Podcast.
I'm Joshua Thompson. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I am best known for my music project, Laika Beats.
Awesome. And Joshua, what got you into music initially? Was it a family influence, or what sparked that curiosity as a young kid?
Yeah, it was definitely a family influence. My parents they're not musicians, but they both love music so much. And so, yeah, as a kid, I would just remember them always playing music and like singing along to music. And then my dad in particular at that time was collecting CDs, and he had this room with this huge surround system and big speakers, like just for listening to music. And
that's awesome.
Me and my sister, like when he was at work, we would like go through his CD collection and just like pull out random stuff and kind of listen to it. So it was like almost like the precursor to like DJing, like digging deep into like music collections and finding like cool, unique stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's like even still, like me and my sister, like almost daily, we're like sending tracks to each other through our phones.
That's great.
And Spotify.
Is she pretty similar age, or you guys twins or something?
Yeah, we're a year apart, actually.
Okay.
Exactly. So we've always, since we were like so close in age, we've always been best friends for sure.
That's awesome that you had like a dedicated listening room with huge collection of tracks.
Yeah.
What stuck out to you at a young age? Like, what tracks did you gravitate towards, or what CDs or styles?
So the very first band that had an impact on me was Nirvana. So it was like the 90s, and like my parents, that was like Nirvana was like their number one during that like time period. And yeah, I just remember like also just like loving like the same music too. And I would steal their Nirvana CDs from them, and I'd actually like play it in my room, and then I would have like a sock and pretend it was a microphone, and I would like sing along with it. Like as an age, like even before I was a musician, like I wanted to like do music. Like as a kid, like I originally was like I wanted to be like a front man singer.
Nice. And what was the catalyst that made you start taking it more seriously and discovering that you can create music, not just sing through a sock to somebody else's track?
Live music, like getting so my first show was actually like Van's Warped Tour, when I was 14, and I got to see like a bunch of my favorite bands there, and then just like being exposed to that atmosphere, just like being around so many people who are like passionate about the same music I am, and then being able to see my favorite musicians like perform it live. And then like what's cool too, especially with like bands, is like the live and studio experience is like so different. But yeah, it was like I'm seeing like during that time my favorite band was AFI, and like
Okay.
incredible live performers. And like, yeah, when I saw them and their energy on stage, I was like, I want to do that.
That's awesome. And what gave you the confidence to start making music, or maybe the naivety to think that you could do it initially? Because it's a huge jump from going from a kid to listening to starting to make music to believe that you could get there on stage. So what gave you that spark or that confidence to start creating?
I would say like my friends, like I started just started out as like a hobby, and wasn't like, I really wasn't taking it like too serious, you know, but was like still able to like play some cool stuff. And then in high school, I met other musicians, and they were like, we should start a band and like try to start writing music and like progressing all our skills. So it was actually, yeah, my friend who just like brought us together, and he's like, let's just try to write our own music and like do our own thing. And what was cool is our drummer at that time, his dad was a singer and songwriter and was playing shows around Colorado. So he had like a 16 track recorder and like
Oh,
a pretty
wow.
nice treated studio. So we were able to experiment with like that stuff, and I feel like learn like really fast because of that. Like just being able to kind of work like as we were learning how to write music, we also were learning how to like record at the same time.
Wow, that's accelerated learning right there.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
so cool that you had access to like a high quality studio as a young kid and got to play around with it. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
What were
definitely.
you playing?
So fortunate, especially now thinking like that being so expensive. It's like so cool. His dad just let us, you know, like no supervision. He's like, yeah, just use this stuff and like go for it, you know. And I'm like, that's like really cool. I think of him to like be open to encourage us to do that.
Oh yeah, and that equipment's not cheap.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's a lot of trust in his son and you guys to treat it with respect, and it sounds like you did.
Yeah,
What were you playing in the band back then? Was it guitar?
I was playing guitar.
Cool. And when did you start producing music on the computer or more electronic MIDI style?
So for me, it came a little later. It came during college. So after I graduated high school when I was 18, that's when I moved to downtown Denver, and I went to school at CU Denver, and my one of my dorm mates at the time was a big raver. And so he exposed me. He took me to my first rave and started getting me into like some house and electronic producers. And yeah, like and I just fell in love with it. Like I was just like, yeah, fell in love with the music and the atmosphere and the lights.
So your roommate had a big influence on you and brought you into the electronic scene, and you discovered something brand new about music. How did you then start to pull that inspiration and create your own music digitally? Obviously, you learned how to record at a young age, but how did you start to think that maybe you could find a place in the electronic music industry?
Awesome. So when I got involved with electronic music, I immediately wanted, because as being a musician, I wanted to be a part of like that too. So my first step was I went and bought vinyl turntables and started collecting vinyl. And like at that time, I was really into like DJ Shadow and RJD2, Bonobo, and then kind of like the battle scratching DJing. So like initially, that's what I first wanted to start doing. And then I started doing that and was having fun, but like it wasn't quite like what I expected it was going to be. And then I started doing research, and I realized that like producing is like what I wanted to do. I wanted to make tracks from like the ground up. And so yeah, I'd say I DJ'd for like a year, and then I was like, I want to produce actually. So yeah, then I first bought Reason, was my first DAW, and then just started going ham with it, like working on it every day. and like YouTube was starting to like pop off right around then. So I was starting to watch like YouTube videos of other producers, and I like even nowadays, like I still like weekly I watch tutorials on sound design, mixing, and promotion and marketing. And so yeah, I just started like the patterns around then. And then after a year of producing and Reason, I was like, yeah, I really love this. I want to start kind of going more serious with it. And like so I went and bought a MacBook Pro, and then I saw like some videos on Logic Pro, and I'm like, oh, that kind of looks like more like my style than like what Reason is right now. So I got Logic, and yeah, I immediately like vibed with that.
Do you remember any of the mental breakthroughs when you first picked up Reason or Logic that was just maybe mind-blowing or exciting or got you lit your fire?
It was funny, like right around that time when I had Reason, I also had a pirated version of Fruity Loops, and it was actually the drum sequencer in that. Like I was having trouble like doing drums on Logic and Reason, but Fruity Loops had that like step sequencer where you like clicked in the notes and you could see the patterns like going in real time. And I feel like that was the breakthrough. Like with that, like I understood like rhythm. I started to understand rhythm and like drums and then cycles. And like what was funny is like I didn't know how to like arrange in Fruity Loops. So whenever I would make like just like minimal like house tracks and just do it live and just for fun, it would just be like 5 minutes of just making a song like on the fly.
That's awesome.
And like yeah, I feel like that was like the first breakthrough. Like even nowadays, like I'm a very like in the moment like kind of guy. Like I almost like to play a song like I'm playing live. Like I really like improvisation and kind of like making it up as I go.
So was it the visual aspect of the drums that helped solidify your understanding of rhythm?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like visuals have always helped me a lot. Like I'm a very aesthetic kind of person, which is why I feel like I'm like really attracted to like Logic and then Apple's ecosystem. I just love like a really clean, minimal like interface. But yeah, like aesthetic is like super important to me. And then yeah, it was nice because before it was just like dropping in samples into like the timeline, you know, and that just didn't make sense to me. But for some reason that drum sequencer, yeah, it
Something
like
clicked.
totally like I started understanding like the timing and like where things need to go and like giving stuff space and that sort of thing.
Nice. And when did you come up with your artist name or start to brand yourself?
Almost immediately when I started producing. Yeah, I started like I'm really into graffiti art, and I was doing graffiti for a few years before I started producing, and Laika was actually my graffiti name originally. And then I kind of transferred it over to music because like I just always loved like how it sounded and how it looked. And then I originally pulled it off. It was from Gorillaz had a reggae dub remix album called Laika Come Home. And like, yeah, my sister bought that album and shared it with me. And I was just like, Laika, I was like, man, I love that name so much. So like, I kind of Googled like, what is Laika, and saw the story about it. It was like the first dog sent to space. And I was like,
I
I'm like,
didn't know
the
that.
album title makes sense now. Like Laika Come Home. I'm like, that's so cute. And yeah, I just always resonated with that story. And so, yeah, I started off as Laika. And then as I started to like pick up pace with followers and stuff, it became clear right away. It was really hard to find me in search engines because I was competing with the Space Dog, which is like a super famous part of world history. So yeah, we just added on the beats, and like that really helped. Like people were able to just find me right away and like helped me stand out more. It's like, it's definitely like being an artist, like your name is so important. Like you got to go on like a search engine and make sure that there's no competition for your name or spelling, because you need people to find you easily because they'll give up fast if it's hard.
Absolutely. Well, that explains the Space Dog track, and I didn't know that
Yeah.
Laika was the dog. So that's cool. Well, let's talk about a few of your tracks. I'd love to start out with Endless Pursuit. And first of all, the album cover is awesome. And is it you who made that?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So is this Photoshop? What tools are you using, out of curiosity?
Oh, Photoshop.
Nice. And somehow you bent clouds into a circle. For those who are listening who can't see it, not looking at it right now, and somebody's it looks like two kids are walking on a dock through the clouds with your logo in the center. It's just a beautiful album cover. So wanted to say that off the bat. And it's the title track on the album. What was it that gave you the inspiration for that track?
So like Endless Pursuit, it like directly refers to like my love of music, and like what I was kind of thinking with like Endless Pursuit is just like, even if I wasn't playing shows, if like I didn't have fans, like I would still be making music every day. Like this is what I love to do, and like this is what I'm gonna do till I die. So it's just like Endless Pursuit just describes just like my love for music, Bailey. You know, it's like it's just my endless pursuit. Like in the end, like I really don't have like a goal. Like I do have goals, but like it's more just like a part of me.
Is it fair to say it's like not about the destination but the journey?
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely what I was trying to get at.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And when you are creating, well, let's talk about that track. So there's a few vocal samples right before the drop. There's like a whoop, and then the drop comes in. And is that you on the mic, or is this somebody else, or how do you pull in those vocal samples?
Oh yeah, that one is someone else, and yeah, I mostly sample like for my vocals. Like I like to chop them a lot, and what I do is I go on to like different websites, or I approach different vocalists, and then I buy loops or verses, and then I like to take those and kind of like chop them up and put effects on them. And then I'll map them to my keyboard and play them too.
That's awesome.
Definitely. But yeah, that one, yeah, I think it was like in like one of those like trap drum kits, you know, they have the like, cause like ad-lib, like I'm a huge fan of hip hop and rap, and like, and I love ad libs. Like, I just think they add so much hype, and like they make like, they just add like a fun element to tracks, I think. And,
yeah, it's kind of a surprise factor too for the listener. You're like, "What? Oh, okay." And then we're going in. So
yeah, it's a
nice transition.
It reminds me of like if you'd be in a live audience, you know, there's always like that guy or girl, you know, who like throws out ad libs like that, you know, like it was cool. So yeah, I always like, I personally like, I love vocals. I try to, even if it's just a small little shout like that, like in a track, like always use it. Like I just need at least some kind of vocal. Like if my track doesn't have verses, I'll at least throw in like a little hey here or there. But yeah, vocals are like really important to me, and I think they add a lot of human element to electronic music too. I think they're really effective with electronic music.
Nice. And you said something briefly that I want to kind of explore a little bit further for I think it might benefit somebody else out there. And that is that you would approach vocalists and buy loops and samples. So does that give you the freedom to then make your own music and not worry about copyright infringement?
Yes, exactly. And it's cool. It's just like when you're on different websites and stuff, you got to just pay attention to like usually with like vocalists and their packs and like verses they sell, they'll have like kind of like a readme file, you know, that will like tell you the license, and it will like tell you like how you can use it, you know. Like some vocalists will want you to put their name in parentheses like in your track name, whereas some just like to be anonymous. And then some will be like, you pay one fee and then the vocal is yours, you know, you don't have to pay him ever again. Whereas some vocalists will be like, you pay him a fee, but then they also get a cut of royalties as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so what are the key things that you're looking for from a legal perspective? Is it Creative Commons? I don't know. I don't know what you're looking for, but what do you identify as like, this is a green light, this is a red light?
Definitely, yeah, the Creative Commons license, I think, yeah, is green light. Or like they'll say like royalty free too. That's another good, like they'll usually even put that like on the websites, like in the description, you know, like these samples are royalty free. Feel free to use them as you want, and you don't have to credit anybody.
Copyright is such a confusing concept, especially when you're dealing with international artists, and the rules are different depending where you live. It's very confusing, but it's important to navigate well. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree too. Yeah, you just have to be aware. And like worst case scenario too, what's nice about it nowadays is like social medias. Even with like super huge artists, you can message them and email them, and like I guarantee they'll like email you back, you know. Like I've done that with artists before, like, hey, is it okay if I use this vocal? Or is like, I made this like bootleg remix, are you okay with me putting it on SoundCloud? And then it's like a simple yes or no. But like I found like that is just like so effective. Like if you're ever in doubt, just reach out to the artist on social media and kind of ask them like which way to go. And like not only does that make you look good, but it also kind of, you know, you're putting your name in their peripheral vision too. So you're kind of like putting yourself out there as well. That's
beautiful. I love that. So when you approach an artist, do you do it prior to making the track or after?
Nowadays I do it prior, but when I first started, it was like a little after. And like honestly, I'm guilty. Like I feel like kind of in the mid 2010s, like SoundCloud was like the wild west. Like there's just like, they weren't really cracking down on like bootleg remixes yet, you know, and like copyright infringement. Like they just didn't care back then. So I was doing that. And yeah, just like making bootleg remixes. And then when I started getting bigger and people started making like bootleg remixes of my stuff, and like I was like, oh damn, I was like, it like didn't feel too good, you know, especially like if you don't like their remix. And
they don't credit your name or artist or something like that.
Totally. Yeah. So like when that first happened to me, I was just like, I had that like epiphany. I was like, oh man, I'm like, actually what I'm doing is like kind of messed up. So like I actually, all the bootleg remixes I did, I went and reached out to the artist and kind of like told them, you know, like I put this on SoundCloud and I realized that it's like messed up. Like I never even tried to contact you about it. And so like after that point, now it's like I always like approach the artist first for sure.
Nice. And how do you continue your creative flow when you're sitting down, you're like, yes, this is the beat that I want to use, or this is the vocal sample. I'm ready to make this. Oh, damn, I got to go to Facebook. And, you know, how do you keep your flow, your creative flow, when you have to reach out prior? Do you have any strategies for that?
I do. So typically, like when I'm like recording a new track, I do not bring my phone in the studio. I like leave it in another room, and then I turn off the Wi-Fi on my computer. And I kind of like eliminate those distractions. And like sometimes it can bite me, you know, like sometimes I'll get it like an emergency like call or something. And like, so like that's the downside. It's like sometimes I can miss those. Luckily, my girlfriend works remotely. And so if something ever comes up, like usually like my parents and stuff will call her first anyway. She'll be able to come and like get me. But
Nice.
yeah, I feel like eliminating distractions is so important for the creative process. It's like because it's like you want to get like locked into like that flow, and it's like I feel like my best tracks kind of just like is just like 4 hours just straight, you know, and just like you don't even realize that time went by. But if I have it where I'm like working on a track in like an hour and then someone knocks on my door and or like an emergency happens, it kind of like I almost don't finish those tracks. It's like I definitely have to have like a 4 hour block to get like a solid idea down.
That's awesome. And do you batch when you reach out to artists? Do you like reach out to like 10 artists of different vocals that you could potentially use in the future? And then that's one day, and then a different day is like for creating?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like to break up my sessions because I have it a lot like it's like I can like feel it nowadays, like when I'm like my body is like I'm ready to write a song. But I still have those days where like I'll get in the studio and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to write a song, but like nothing really happens. And like I can kind of realize that in like the first hour, you know, like, oh, this isn't going anywhere. So then I start focusing on, that's when I start doing, all right, instead I'm going to do sound design. I'm just going to design sounds on my synthesizer, save them in a folder to use later. It's like I'm going to go look for vocals and reach out to vocalists and kind of collect those. So I definitely I like to build up little libraries of like vocals in my sound design. And then that way, like when I'm inspired to write a track, I just have my stuff ready to go and like plug in.
That's awesome. And I love you mentioned it earlier, but I just love that you turn off Wi-Fi, you put your phone in the other room. That's awesome. How do you organize all of your sounds, vocals, samples, things like that? So that way, when you're in the flow, you can easily find kind of a group of sounds that you're looking for.
So I have this like just like a master folder, you know, which is like basically just called Laika Beats. And like in that folder, I'll have like a folder of like synthesizer presets, and then another one of like drum samples, and another one of vocal samples. And yeah, I personally love organizing stuff. Like I'm huge on organization. And then I just take that folder and then drop it into like the environment, and either in Logic or like Ableton, and then they're all just ready to go inside of there.
When you sit down at your computer, blank slate, you're feeling it, you're inspired. How do you typically start a new song? What's the first track that you build?
Awesome. So it's crazy. The last 2 years, I've really like switched up my process. Originally, it would always be drums. I would start with the drum beat first, get the drums going, get a good percussion going. And then from there, I would like then go bass and then build everything on top of that. Whereas nowadays, my first step is usually I sit at my keyboard, and then I'll pull up like a piano sampler, just a grand piano classic sound, and then I'll just play around with different chords and melodies. And then it's I usually come up with something fast. I'll like hit a melody, or I'll hit a few chords, and I'm just like, that's it right there. And like especially with the chords nowadays, if I just have like an 8-bar loop of just like 3 simple chords, like it's so easy for me to build an entire track like on top of that. And there's even occasions where like in the end I'll change the piano to like a synthesizer pad, or just take it out completely, you know. It's just kind of like the guideline to like help me build like a melodically complex track, I guess. But
nice.
Like that's really helped me is like chords. I feel like chords are so useful for writing music. And that's been my process the last 2 years.
So what advice would you give to a musician who's trying to discover new chords or build their melodic mental library? What strategies did you use to learn various chords?
YouTube videos. There's so many good YouTube channels on piano. It's cool. Yeah, I would just like on there just like type in, you know, like simple chord, like find a key you like E minor, and just be like, what are the chords for E minor? And then start playing around with those. But like what really helped me which I like learned earlier from like other musicians as a tip, is to practice scales. Just practice scales all the time and just get to the point where you just like, you don't have to look at anything, you just memorize scales. Because if you memorize scales, you can build melodies and chords like so easily. You know the notes like in that key of what to play. And like yeah, that was like one of the best parts about like going to school for music, was meeting, like I met so many talented musicians, and then I realized like watching them in the halls and stuff, like they were always practicing like different scales, and I was like, all right, like that's what I need to do to get to that level, is like I should start practicing scales. And because with guitar I was just like self-taught, like I had no music theory and knew no idea what I was doing, but it was like I was still writing like cool music. And like I found out later is like I was using music theory, I just didn't understand it at the time. And yeah, just learning, I feel like even just learning just the very basic of like music theory will just help you so much as a musician. But I think, yeah, my biggest tip I would give is just practice scales. Like you don't even have to do piano, just pick like any instrument and just learn scales. You can even do scales with your voice.
What are some of your favorite plugins or VSTs or tools that you use in Logic?
My main workhorse is Serum. I feel like I use Serum a lot. Like typically like the sound design that I do from scratch is always with Serum, and it's just I just mesh with like Serum so well. Like I always tell people, like when they ask me like, oh, what DAW should I use, what synthesizer should I use, and my recommendation is always, I'm like, go download the demos for like 4 or 5 and like see which one that you make music the easiest with, or like you understand the best. And for me it was like Serum. Like before Serum was released, I was trying to do like Massive, and was just trash. I couldn't get any good sounds out of Massive. But it was like the day I bought Serum, it just like synthesis just like clicked for me. And so like because of that, like because it's like I know it like the back of my hand, it's just my go-to like synthesizer. And then I also used the Alchemy synthesizer in Logic a lot too. And that one is I usually don't do synthesis from scratch in there. I usually just use its presets. And then it's just nice because it's like it's so different from Serum. It's more like, I'd say like cinematic. Like the presets are kind of built for like more like soundtracks, I guess. And yeah, and it just adds like a really cool effect. But I'd say those are my 2 main synthesizers. When
Nice.
it comes to mixing, I like the native plugins in Logic, and like especially Logic's compressor and reverbs are incredible. Like I've played around with so many reverbs and compressors, and like I don't know, Logic is still just my favorite. I think they sound great. But when it comes to mastering though, I use the Fab Filter suite. I use all Fab Filters plugins. Not only do I love like the interface and aesthetic of them, but they all just have, I feel like they're very clean. Like the result, like when mastering with them, like I just always get like clean results, and I love that.
So with Serum, do you use single wave tables, or I think that's what it's called, the single cycle waves, and then blend them in between?
Yeah, definitely. And like also one of the things I love about Serum is you can import external wavetables and then draw your own. So like one of like my like techniques with like my sound design is I'd say like online you could search for like the wavetables of Massive, or what I did was
cool.
There's this popular hardware synth called the Access Virus TI. It's an incredible synthesizer. It's I'd say Tipper is probably the most famous producer who like that's what he uses for all his sound design. And I've always loved that synth, but like the cheapest you can get that synthesizer is like $5,000. But what's cool is someone extracted the wavetables of it and they put it up on Google, and I just download and I use those wavetables all the time. And then you can also, using the LFO tab in Serum, you can draw different shapes in there. And then with on a Mac, if you do Option click, you can drag that shape into the wavetable, and then it has your own wavetable that you drew. And I've been experimenting with that a lot lately to get new results. And yeah, that's one of the reasons why I've always stuck with Serum too, is just like, I don't know, the possibilities are endless with like they really changed the game, like allowing you to import, export, and draw your own wavetables.
Why do you decide to create your own sounds or manipulate sounds rather than taking presets?
Well, because using presets, or even like what I first learned too, when I was like experimenting with Serum's like built-in wavetables, I would just like be playing and I'm like, I was like, oh dang, I'm like, this wavetable is used in like rhythm a lot. Or I'd find like another wavetable and you're like, oh, this one's used in deep house a lot. I began to notice, I'm like, oh, this producer uses this wavetable. Like I know a lot of people, it's like an example is like snails. Like there's a wavetable called I Can Has Kick in Serum, and you hear that wavetable and you're just like, that's like the snail sound right there. And it's crazy. So like I started experimenting with drawing my own just because like I wanted to like introduce new sounds, you know, I want to bring something like new to the game, like some new tones and stuff. And yeah, I was like, if you want to stand out, I feel like you for sure got to do your own sound design from scratch, which is like, you don't always have to do that. Like I still use presets all the time. Like I said before, Alchemy, I only use the presets for that synth. And like, you know, they can be so helpful, but you got to have some of your own sounds too, you know, like, and what's nice is like, you'll find out, you know, like those sounds that people really respond to, and you can keep using those over and over. And that's how I think a lot of artists like build their sound. Like you hear like, I don't know, I feel like those really good artists, you know, you just like, you hear their song and you know it's them, you know, it's like no one can like compete. Like, let me think of an example, like Charles the First, you know, there's nobody who has his vibe or comes close to like what he does. He's just has his own thing going on. Like I really respect that. Or even like Pretty Lights. Like I feel like so many people have tried to be Pretty Lights and they come close, but there's that something special about the way he does sound design and mixes that no one can replicate. And yeah, I would say starting out like Pretty Lights too, like being a Colorado producer, like he really inspired me. Like really, that was when I was like, before then I really didn't think you could have a career in electronic music, but watching him blow up from like nothing to like playing Red Rocks, I was just like, oh dang, I'm like, a kid from Colorado can do this professionally. And that just like really inspired me. And he has just such a, you know, he like doesn't even fit into any genres. He's just like a blend of genres. So I was really inspired by that. I was like, I want to do that. I want to be a producer where people like, they don't know where to like put me, you know? It's just like I blend the lines.
Yeah, I appreciate you using some of those examples, because I was watching Pretty Lights too when he was first starting out. He gave away all his music for free, which was totally unheard of for most artists. I was kind of shocked by that approach. And to see him start to build such a massive audience. And then I saw him at Red Rocks. He opened for an artist, and he just totally, he should have been the headliner. You know, it was very obvious that he just brought so much more energy, even though he's a single person, than the band who followed him. And of course, after that, he was just headlining, you know, as many shows as he could play. So when you're building a track, you said you started out with that 8-bar loop, and you start to perhaps use chords and then maybe build melodies. Do you start in Logic to work vertically and layer different sounds and then arrange, or do you start to arrange off the bat?
No, I definitely like start vertically. Like my first step is I like to get like a solid loop down. Like usually it's probably sometimes in an 8-bar, sometimes it's 16, somewhere in there. It's either an 8 or 16 bar loop. And it will sometimes be like the drop, or it will sometimes be like the melodic intro or outro. But I like to get like a bar that just sounds good, just like on its own. And then once I have that, I'm able from there to start arranging it. because when it comes to arrangement, I usually don't like to add only like risers and like additional percussion, just like little like ear candy basically. But like that main loop, I feel like is the arrangement is kind of just like dissembled from that almost, and like taken away and adding the different parts to it. So yeah, it definitely starts with a solid loop idea, and then I arrange from there. But also, it's funny, like I've been producing a lot of like minimal techno and like deep house lately, and with that genre, it's funny. I do the opposite. Like I start with the intro and then build it to like the outro. So yeah, kind of the total like opposite approach, because I feel like house music is like a little different, you know, because it's more about like building it up over time, like continuously, and then like debuilding it, I guess. Yeah, so it depends on the genre, but typically I like to get a solid loop idea down first.
And when you start adding layers, how do you know what should go and what should be cut? Or how do you avoid over putting in too many ingredients and then suddenly the flavor's lost?
Just experimentation. Yeah, so trying different things, and like and what's cool is like, you know, sometimes like I'll have two like melodies, for example, and like I love both melodies, but it's like pretty obvious that they're like clashing, you know, they're like the same frequency range, and they're just not like meshing, but it's like I really want them to. So like in a case like that, I'll try something like, well, how about I'll do like a call and response, you know, for like the first 2 bars, I'll play that one melody, and then another 2 bars, I'll play the other melody, and kind of go back and forth between them instead of having them directly on top of each other. But I'd say for the most part, it's just like experimentation and then like trusting my ears. Like, I listen to so much music myself in like so many different genres that I feel like over time I've picked up on just like the patterns of like writing a song. And it's like even starting out too, like going back to Pretty Lights too, like I was so hyped on him when I first started. I believe I took this technique from Il Gates. He did like a video I watched and he recommended this, but you take your favorite song, like a song that you can just listen to over and over and like not get sick of, and like that's a brilliantly arranged track. Like if you can listen to it over and over, like that's an amazing arrangement. So he was like, go find those tracks that you can just listen to over and over, and then sit with a pencil and paper and be like, all right, first 16 bars, he just has a hi-hat and one melody playing. Next 16 bars, he adds in a little sub bass. And then like 32 bars after that, he drops it into like some wobble bass kind of stuff. And that really helped me go from just getting stuck on a loop to making like full tracks. Is just like take your favorite artist, and it's like, because what's funny is like you can totally just copy arrangements, you know, and use your own sounds, and no one will ever know. And it's just like you're not ripping them off, you know. It's like there is definitely like a process to writing a hit song, like, or like a certain arrangement that people respond to. So yeah, that really helped me, is just like to study your favorite artist, I guess, you know, pencil and paper, and just be like, they like to do this at this time, and like they kind of like this, and like that really helped me like figure out arrangement for sure.
I love that. It's such an approachable strategy to just use pen and paper. You're not trying to be that artist. You don't have to recreate that, you know, Freebird solo, but you just have to write it down. Okay, there's a solo for 32 bars or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's cool, and it seems so approachable, and obviously you're going to learn a lot from studying the great artists that call to you. So I love you sharing that approach. That's awesome. A couple other tracks I'd love to talk about. So Denver Plug. this is an interesting one. There's like a dissonant arpeggiator. There's definitely MIDI. I think it's MIDI drums. It sounds like it to me, and chopped up vocals. So what strategies do you use to create like a rhythmic vocal using chops or various techniques?
Awesome. So I have, for my vocal chops, I use 2 different separate techniques. Sometimes I'll import it into a sampler and have it mapped on my keyboard, and I like to chop it up by the syllables. I'll just look at the waveform and then kind of eye it and put the different chops, and then I'll listen, and after like each key kind of like sounds good on its own, then I'll turn on a metronome, or I'll turn on the beat that I'm using, and then I'll start playing around with the chops and kind of see what sounds good. And yeah, sometimes it takes 30 seconds. I'll just immediately, it's ready to go. But sometimes it takes like, I don't know, like 30 minutes to an hour, or sometimes it just doesn't even work. But yeah, just like chopping, I like to take like a vocal loop and then chop that apart. And then my process is actually pretty simple. I just use reverb and then maybe a little distortion, but usually just reverb, and then I pitch up and down a lot, because you'll want to pitch your vocals to match like the key of the track, or even to like change it, you know, like you can just completely change the vibe by like pitching it up or pitching it down. And nice. Then the other way too is I'm a big fan of Machina by Native Instruments, which is like a drum pad performance controller, and I use that for vocal chops too. And what's nice about like their ecosystem is that you can drop in the vocal loop, and it's really good at like chopping it up like for you. It's nice. I actually watched Odessa did a video on YouTube where they show that's how they do their vocal chops. And you could probably hear it. It's like my vocal chops are definitely like Odessa influenced. And so, yeah, I watched their video on YouTube, and like they used the Machina and chopped it, and I kind of just totally watched that and like started making it my own.
I appreciate that you're like a sponge, taking in new ideas and strategies from various artists. How do you keep yourself moving forward as your own artist, but at the same time being humble enough to recognize that somebody else might have a different technique that could enhance your production? How do you find that balance between learning and creating?
It's so hard, because there's definitely those times too, you know, like when I just want to try to do something completely on my own. Yeah, I guess just trying to maintain the balance of both, you know, just not trying to get stuck in one or the other too much. Yeah, it can be tough, because it's like the thing with music too is like if you're listening to like a certain artist or song a lot, like it's gonna come through your music like somehow, you know. Like I've noticed that like when I'm listening to certain producers a lot that week, it's like I make a track and like I can kind of hear a little similar like tone to them. And so like another technique I've been kind of using lately, I use it a lot for the album actually, is I choose like a week where I wouldn't listen to music. Like I would still like have music from like movies and stuff like that, but like I wouldn't go on Spotify or SoundCloud, or just like no music this week, and then kind of experiment to see like what kind of music I could come up with for that. So it's like I feel like experimentation is like key. Like I'm always trying to come up with like these little experiments that I can try, and it's like I'll start to notice over time, you know, like after 4 months, I was like, you know what? Like I've started to develop like a little formula with this, like my recent track. So I was like, what can I do to like break that formula and like make a new one? So I'm always like checking myself like with that too, because I'll like notice that I'm like, oh, like I'm using this technique a lot, or like all my tracks kind of follow like the same arrangement, and like what can I do to switch it up? And it's like that's definitely like a question I'm like asking myself all the time.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that you purge yourself of music and influences, and just have a week that you don't. In those dedicated weeks, is your goal to create like several tracks, or is this just an experiment to kind of clear your ears?
It's definitely for like making tracks. Yeah, I started it because I wanted to like I started to notice that I was like, man, I'm like this track sounds like that artist I was listening to a lot this week, and I was just kind of thought I'm like, what would happen if I didn't listen to music for a while and then try to make a track and like didn't watch YouTube videos for like a week, you know, and just try to do it on my own.
I think it's so important to give yourself the space for creativity to come through and to reduce the noise, you know, whatever it is, just other music, other influences, notifications, tutorials, techniques. That's cool. So when you are making music, if you were to generalize, do you make music consistently, or are you, like the analogy I like to use are trees. Like, are you deciduous or coniferous? Like, do you lose your leaves and you bloom in like the spring and like make 20 beats in a month, or are you very consistent? Like
Very consistent. What's cool, like I've been doing it so long now that it's just like such like a natural like part of my life, you know, like brushing my teeth every day, you know, it's kind of like it's just like so natural to me now, you know, whereas like before I would sit down and I would be like so intimidated, you know, and like not know what to do. But like nowadays it's just like I've really noticed that like the last few years is like I don't even think about it anymore. It's like once you have like something and you put in enough hours, you just start to develop like that natural tendency to it. And yeah, that's what happened to me. And just like I don't know, like I fell in love with writing music so much that it just became a part of my life. And yeah, it's like when I get bored at home, that's probably like my first reaction. I was like, well, I should try to go make a song or practice my guitar or do something, you know. It's like it's my response. Like if I'm bored, I'm like, all right, I need to go make something.
And do you have a dedicated space for your music, like where you are right now? I see all kinds of keyboards, guitars, mics, sound treatment.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, I have my own dedicated studio, and I think that is so important. And like I know it's like it can be like a little expensive, and like especially in Denver, it's hard to find like a house, you know, like it's so expensive here. But I think it's so important to kind of have your own room that's like just a studio, because like when I did live like in a studio apartment or was like operating my studio out of my bedroom, it's just too distracting. It was like, yeah, like my body knows, like when I go to my body, like when it hits my bedroom, like it just wants to chill, you know. But it's nice like having like a designated studio. It's almost like clocking in for work, you know. It's like I have an agenda, like I'm here, like there's nothing really to distract me with. And it's like I've even noticed that like I've met some producers in Denver too who like they'll just rent some like studio time to like do that too, you know, just to get away from their house and like kind of lock themselves away.
Do you find yourself more creative at a particular time of day?
I would say it's either like morning or night. Never usually midday, but it's definitely either like morning or night.
Nice. And do you stay up all night creating tracks, or are you pretty consistent with your sleep schedule?
Yeah, lately, like the last 3 years, I've really transitioned into like a super healthy lifestyle. And yeah, I try to keep the same sleeping schedule. I would say like the last year I mostly do mornings, but yeah, before I would sometimes be up till like 5 a.m. working on a track.
Makes probably programming in the morning a little rough.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm like wearing yourself out. And it's like during that time I was going to so many shows too. Like I was like a night owl anyways. But yeah, but nowadays I feel like, I don't know, having a healthy sleep schedule has been helped out like my music and like life so much. Like it was cool, like, you know, pulling all-nighters, like making a track, but I feel healthier, like kind of having like, yeah, not having it affect my sleep schedule.
From the start. So that is also on Endless Pursuit, but it's the last track.
Hey.
Why did you put from the start on the end?
So it's funny, like when I was in high school and like there was more album based back then. And I was like buying a lot of albums, whereas nowadays it's just like mostly singles. But I would notice like a lot of my favorite albums, I feel like the last track was usually like my favorite. It was just a pattern I noticed for some reason. It was like, man, I was like, I always loved the last track. And so when this is my first album ever, so I kind of paid homage to that. I took from the starts my number one favorite track on the album, so I wanted to put it at the end. And then I just thought it was funny how like the track is called like From the Start too, but I put it at the very end. But yeah, but the main reason for that was just because when I was younger, I felt like my favorite songs were always the last track, and so I just wanted to pay homage to that.
That's awesome. And why did you decide to make a full-length album as opposed to a couple EPs?
It was something I always wanted to do, but I could like never make it happen. It was like before that album, like I'd say the 2 years prior to that, like my music was like pretty aggressive, and it's like it's really hard, I feel like, to make an album of just like purely aggressive tracks. But when I started writing that album, like I wrote like 4 tracks like in a week, and then I noticed too, I was just like, man, these are different, but like they blend together like usually like they blend together like so well, like they're meant to be together. And that kind of sparked the idea. I was like, you know what, like I should go for the album. Like I've got 4 tracks here already. I was like, I'll need to go 10 tracks. I need to like make it happen and see if I could do it. Yeah, it was just like producing those 4 tracks. Like I loved the process of recording them, and I loved how they turned out. And I was just like, I wanted to make like a whole adventure kind of like in that same style.
Your logo, did you make that as well?
No, I didn't. So that is it was made by my friend. He produces under the name Cloud D. My logo was designed by Massive Studio, MASV Studio, and they're a new company. They've been around for the past couple years, and my really good friend is on there, and he's the one who came up with the main idea and icon for the new logo. Yeah, what's cool is he actually did my old logo, my original logo too, and it was weird. It was like there was a year I went to like a different graphic designer and had a new logo made, and then like I don't know, it like just didn't feel right. Like immediately I was like, oh man, I miss my old logo, and I was like, I can't believe like I switched over to that. So I went to him again and I was like, yo, I'm like so I was like, I got rid of your logo and I immediately regretted it. I was like, I want to do something new and different. And like he was so excited too. He's like, honestly, he's like, I don't feel that old logo anyways. He's like, I want to make something new. He's such a talented graphic designer. He also makes music under Cloud D, and he's a member of a group called Brick Squash. And what's cool too is he was actually kind of my foot into the door in the music industry as well. And how it all came about is when he was his Cloud D project was blowing up pretty good, like in the mid 2010s, and I was just going to every show that he was playing in Denver. And what's cool is like he recognized me like out in the crowd, and I remember there was one night after his set, he like came to the crowd and he was like, I've noticed you're like always at my shows going crazy, and he's like, I just want to introduce myself and say thank you. And then yeah, we became friends at that point. And then he was like, I told him I produce music too, and he was like, oh cool, you should send me some tracks. And so I started like sending him tracks, and he'd be like, yeah, these are cool. And then I sent him these group of tracks back in 2017, and he was like, yo, these are so fire. He's like, will you open up for me like at a show, that I have in a couple months? And at that show that I opened up for him for, my agent was actually in the crowd that night too, like for the show. And that's where he initially discovered me as well. So it was crazy. Like that's how I got in the music industry. And that's why I kind of tell like other people too, like it's all about networking. Like if you want to make it as a musician, you got to go to the shows and you got to meet people and make those connections. And like the artists and promoters, they know who goes to their shows all the time. And if you become a recognizable face, it will be that much easier when you like reach out to them on social media and stuff. So and like, yeah, I think that's how I got in the music industry, was just by going to shows and meeting people. And it was like really cool. Yeah, like he was just such an integral part, like not only introducing me to the music industry, but like helping design my logos for me
and getting you on stage too.
Yeah,
which sparked the agency connections, that's awesome. So fortuitous.
Yeah, most definitely.
So 2020, everything changed, right? You can't go to shows anymore. Everything shut down. How did that affect you, and what did you learn from it?
Initially, I was very bummed. Like literally like that, like the beginning of 2020, I had finally started to make enough money where like this project was like full time, you know. I'm like, all right, I'm like full time Laika Beats now. And then it just immediately got shut down. So at first I was like depressed, you know, and I was just like, oh man, like I made it and now it ends. And I'm like, and then I started wondering, I'm like, will I ever get booked again after this? You know, like it's going to be a year or two before we go to shows again. I was like, am I going to be able to stay relevant during that time? And like, yeah, I just had all those floods and I was like so scary, but I was like, it was like actually a blessing, because I was able to be like, well, now that like my future in music is uncertain, like I don't really have like a pressure to like make a certain kind of like song anymore. Like I can do whatever I want. And I was listening to like some of like the original tracks I like produced, and they're actually like they're like very similar style to the Endless Pursuit album. Like they were just like hip hop beats with like colorful melodic synths thrown on top. And I was just like, I like listened to those tracks and I was like, man, I kind of got really far away from like my initial like what I was like going for. And I was like, I should try to like kind of loop back to that and see like what kind of music I can make in that same style like nowadays. And that's how the album came about. It was actually like inspired by my old tracks. I was like, I don't feel any pressures to make like bangers right now. Like I just want to make just like colorful tracks. I wanted like, the main goal too is like, I felt like I could just feel the whole world hurting, you know? Like that was like the crazy thing about 2020 is like a lot of bad things, but like I felt like in my first time in the life, like I felt like united with the whole world. You know, it's like every country is going through the exact same thing right now. It's like, you know, it's like, and that was kind of comforting, you know, it's like everybody in the world is being affected by this right now. And in that kind of too, I was like, you know what, I want to start making music that's more like therapeutic, you know, that can like help people with their emotions or like make them happy. And I kind of thought back to, I'm a big fan of Bonobo, and he's an artist. Like if I'm sad or mad, he's like one of the first artists I like turn to. He's just able to like calm me, you know. It's like he's a shrink, you know. It's just like I just feel so good after listening to his music, and I wanted to be that kind of artist, you know. I wanted to like not just make party music. I want to make music that like helps people and like taps into their emotions and makes them feel.
Did you find that you were able to make more music in 2020, given that you were probably at home most of the time? Or was it a barrier to create because you felt, the pressure of everything?
At first it was tough, but it was like, I'd say like that March and April was like really tough, you know, like I was just kind of, I was like basically just like depressed a little bit, you know, and just like, yeah. And I don't know, lost like the confidence a little bit. And then, but after that couple months, got back in my studio and started experimenting again. And then after that, it was just like game on. It was like the rest of the year, I think I was making music every day. And yeah, I became obsessed with it again. So yeah, it was like, I'll definitely have those like periods in life, you know, like where I'll get depressed or I'll have an injury and, you know, I'll kind of lose it for like 3 months. But it's like, what's awesome is like whenever that happens on those breaks, when I come back, I just feel like so much stronger and I'm able to just, go gas on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate your honesty and being vulnerable and just saying that, like, hey, I went through a hard time and, you know, I had fear, uncertainty, doubt about myself and about my music and would I be relevant next year or is anybody going to remember me? You know, all those thoughts are probably circling through most artists' heads who are reliant or perform live. So now that the music industry closed in 2020, you went through that period, you came out of it with fire in your belly and you started making a lot of music. Were you able to kind of make it through that year? Did you start learning programming then, or is this something that you've been into for a long time?
It's something I've been into for a long time. Like, definitely like taking some classes on it, but like never fully committed to it. Like I was definitely interested, but like I never like fully committed to it. And that was another good thing about like last year too. It was like, you know, like what new things can I learn like outside of music? And yeah, that was one thing I thought of. I was like, man, I used to, in high school, I loved like coding like little websites and stuff. I was like, I should get back into that again. And yeah, I started getting back into that. And coding's totally an art too, you know, like I just learned, like, I just love creating stuff. And it was just, and it's nice to have like a non-music hobby too, to kind of, but yeah, last year, yeah, I went full force, started doing coding every day. And then another cool thing about last year was, so up until 2020, my guitars were locked in a storage unit for like a good 6 years. Hadn't touched a guitar in 6 years. Like, it's like right when I graduated high school, it's like I just put my guitar in storage and never touched it again until the pandemic happened. And then I was like, you know what? I'm like, it's time to go get the guitars out. And I've been playing daily ever since then. So that was the great thing about last year is I was able, I don't know, I felt like the things I kind of had lost, I was able to bring them back and like kind of capitalize on those. And it was just like so awesome. Like I probably wouldn't be playing guitar right now if last year didn't happen, you know? It's crazy to think about.
Was it scary picking up the guitar after that many years of not playing it?
It wasn't scary. Like, honestly, it hurt. Like, I always tell people this. I'm like, like learning guitar is painful. Like developing those calluses again, like it's crazy. It was like out of like all the instruments I've played is like, I don't know, like guitar, like learning guitar can be painful, you know, which is like wild. It's like piano is so gentle, you know, like you'll never hurt your fingers on a piano, but like if you're playing like super heavy guitar strings, you can literally make your fingers bleed. And like, so yeah, like I wasn't scared at first, but I remember that first couple weeks were painful.
That's good.
Then you get those calluses back and it's all good after that.
Yeah. So what's one of the best investments that you've ever made, either time or money?
I would have to say the MIDI keyboard. Yeah, that's just been like the source of just so much inspiration for me. I'm a very hands-on guy. Like I just can't like produce a track using a mouse and keyboard. Like I've tried it. I just like, it just doesn't work for me. Like that's why I use the Machina drum pads too. Like I punch in my drums with my hands too, which is nice because it gives you that human feel because you get those different velocities and even like your timing is off sometimes. And yeah, I would say I always like to push when I meet new producers. I always like, you got to get like a keyboard or some drum pads. I was like, I was like, that I think has been such a source of like inspiration for me, and just
And do
fun.
you
Like,
play? Oh, sorry to interrupt you, but do you play drum pads with your fingers, or are you playing with sticks?
oh, with my fingers.
I guess is it just a little? What's the piece of equipment that you're
Oh,
using
I have
for the
it
drum
right here.
pad?
I'll show you. So
Oh,
this right here
nice.
is the Native Instruments Machina. This is technically the Machina Micro.
Okay, and
Yeah.
then you program melodies onto it and or drum kits.
Yeah, definitely. It's mostly drums and percussion and vocal chops, but sometimes I will do like melodies. It's a good switch up because the 16 pads is like very limiting compared to like my keyboard, which is 88 keys, you know? So I like that sometimes, you know, like really limiting myself, like, all right, you just have 16 keys to work with and that's all. And that's been like a really good technique too, you know? I recommend that to people. It's like sometimes it's good to like limit yourself on certain things. And so, yeah, it's nice. If I ever, you know, when there will be those times I get sick of the keyboard and I'm just like, all right, I'll punch in the pads. And like you kind of get that like hip hop effect too, because that's how they used to do the sampling was with drum pads just like this, you know? So you kind of get that like choppy like pad feel. And it's like, yeah, very, very hip hop technique for sure.
What would you say is your X factor? Like, what separates you from the rest?
I think it's my sound design. I feel like I've created some sounds that have like never been used in electronic music before. Like they're kind of similar to other sounds, but they definitely have like a very unique like tone to them that I've been able to just like dial in. And then at the same time too is like I feel like I'm a really good genre blender. Like I think that stems from like I listen to just so many different genres, and like I kind of like pay attention to that. Like when even like when I'm out like shopping at a mall and I hear some pop music like Justin Bieber, you know, I'll be focusing in and I'll be like, oh dang, like that guitar riff or like the way what he did with his voice. I'm like, that's cool. I'm like, how can I incorporate that into like a hip hop song or like a house song? So I'm always trying to like, yeah, even like stuff I'm not directly like sitting down and listening to on Spotify, even when I'm out and about, I'm still like picking up like certain things and I'm like, like how can I use that in a different genre? And I feel like that's really made me stand out is like, I don't know, like, yeah, just the different genres. And it's like, it's nice to like kind of mixing like old genres with new genres. Like nostalgia is like such a powerful drug. Like people respond to nostalgia like so much.
Do you feel like as a musician who understands in depth the production process, do you find yourself deconstructing everything you hear and, oh, there's a low pass filter, oh, there's an arpeggiator, you know, you're thinking analytically about it rather than just absorbing it? Do you see that about yourself?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. It'll be cool. I feel like kind of like smoking weed will like help me not be as analytical, you know, and will kind of be like, I don't know, just like melt into the music, I guess. But yeah, like my normal state, I'm definitely analyzing. And it's just like I can't even help it, you know, it's just yeah, like the way I think now, which is totally different, which was cool because like before I started producing music, I was going to like shows every week and hearing music all the time. So it's crazy to like go from like not being able to analyze music and like now that's the only way I can listen to it.
So you've taken control of your musical trajectory. You've managed everything from the, you know, first from the creation process to the mastering process. But yet you do work with an agency and a manager. And I'm wondering, why did you decide to leverage a team for certain aspects, but not on the music creation process or mastering process?
Just because I've definitely like over time have like realized like my weaknesses and like where I'm really limited. And yeah, it was like I was just able to find a team, you know, I think that like compensates for my weaknesses, you know, their strengths definitely are like what like I'm bad at, and just it's cool. Like I always want to have complete control of the music, but it's like the business part of it, like I definitely need help in, you know, just like I'm not like a savvy business person. And yeah, it's nice having them. And then what's important too is like when you go and you hire an agent or manager, is you want them to have connections that like benefit you, you know, like that's what I tell people is like, they're like, oh, should I sign to this manager? And I'm just like, what are their connections and like how do they relate to you, you know, like, and that's most important. Yeah, like they're definitely, I'd say for the most part, they've helped me like make those connections, you know, like yeah, like a manager and agents, like they've been building up their network list like over time, and they just know like where to plug you in and stuff like that. And it was like, I know how to do the music part, but sometimes I struggle, yeah, with like the business and marketing part. And it's nice having them now too, because like I'm learning at the same time, like watching them, and then just be like, oh, cool, like this is how the industry works. What's also nice too is just like having, like I just have the managers like new like this year, and like Halston is like a good friend of mine going back, and it's just like he's been coming to my shows with me, and it's just so nice to have like a friend there, you know, like he doesn't even have to like do anything or say anything. It's just like helps me a lot having like a friend there like for support, you know, especially when you're like out of your home city and stuff. So like it's really been cool, and like that kind of gives me the confidence, you know. It's like, damn, like he really believes in my music, like he's buying plane tickets to go to New York to see me, you know. And like it's really inspired me. It's like it's cool to have someone like super passionate like you are, you know, and that like wants to help you and see you succeed. So it's cool like to have someone who like has my back.
Yeah, is in your corner and is a buddy.
Yeah.
So I was listening back to some of the earlier podcasts, and one of the artists said that their advice was get a friend who's OCD, who really likes to party, and get him on board, and he'll be the manager. I don't know if you would agree with that assessment, but what characteristics are best when you're looking for a team?
Oh, definitely. So with the manager, I completely agree with that, and I would say extroverted, like super extroverted person. Like I'd say like Halston's biggest strength is like no matter where we go, like we go to a show, we go to a restaurant, he can just approach anybody and start a conversation and meet them, and just like, and he can just like light up a room in that way, you know, just like so good at like talking and connecting with people. And like that's the kind of person you want. Like when it's funny because like as him being a friend, like I met him going to shows, and that's how he was when we were like at shows, you know, like he'd be going around meeting everyone, complimenting everyone, and just everybody knew who he was, you know. And like that's the kind of person you want as your manager, you know, that person that he goes into a room and like if people don't know him, they're gonna know him by the end of the night, you know.
That's great. What advice would you give to a young musician starting out today?
Just have fun and take it slow. I think the best way when you're first starting out is just to have it as like a hobby, you know. Like I meet people who like they start producing and they're like, all right, I'm gonna get in the music industry, like, you know, like I'm gonna quit my job and I'm gonna go full force. And I'm just like, that's just a bad idea right there. It's like with music, like you just never know like what's going to happen, you know, like when you're going to get your foot in the door, you know. There's no secret formula, and it takes a long time. Like I guarantee you, if you look at like people think artists just blow up overnight, but I guarantee you go look at any artist and they were doing it for like a decade and so long. Like I even look at like Justin Bieber, you know, people like to talk crap about him, but he was putting up full songs on YouTube, like playing live when he was 10 years old, you know. Like he's been doing it his whole entire life, like his whole life just dedicated to that. And I think like for him or anyone else, it started off as like a hobby, you know. And then when you start to get good, people, your friends and roommates, like they'll start to notice. And I feel like when they start to notice in that way, then you could start, you know, being like, all right, I can pursue this like professionally. But I don't know, I feel like a lot of people get burnt out or depressed because right away they're just like, oh, I want to make this into a career. And it's just like, it's just not something that happens overnight. So I think it's at first, it's just like take it slow and have fun and make sure it's something you love and want to do all the time. Because it's like once you're a professional, like to keep it going and to stay relevant, you're going to have to be making music all of the time. Like nowadays, I feel like you can't take breaks or people will lose focus from you. You got to like, you just always got to be releasing music. So yeah, just have fun and make sure you love it and just take it slow at first.
Well said. Well said. I think it's so important to put out music and to be consistent, and also to recognize that the traction is not going to come all at once, that it takes, as you said, a decade to get moving sometimes. And, you know, they say every overnight success is like 20 years in the making or something. But I wonder, what gives you the discipline when you said it earlier that when you feel bored, now's the time to go make music. Now's the time to go pick up the guitar, learn those tutorials. Why don't you just scroll Instagram or watch TV, zone out? What gives you the discipline to recognize that you're bored and then go do something productive?
I would say I like to just kind of check myself, you know, and be like how is this going to help me grow as a person? You know, like if I just sit here on my phone all day, you know, like I'm not really going to grow or progress in like the things I love. And yeah, like it was hard. Like I've totally been addicted to my phone in the past and like video games or like watch TV all the time. But I think it was just always getting in that habit of like checking myself, you know, just being like, hey, like you've been vegging out playing video games here for an hour. Like that's cool. It's like, but you need to do something like productive too, you know, that will help you like grow and progress. And so, yeah, I always just like try to think like, I guess my main goal is like I always want to be better tomorrow than I was the day before. So I just always try to keep that in mind. And like the only way to get better tomorrow is by taking action today.
That's wonderful. Perfectly said. Love it. Outside of music and programming, what are you into?
I'm a huge skateboarder and snowboarder. I love graffiti art too, and it's awesome. I took like a 5-year break from that too, but have been starting to do it again the last year, basically. It's nice. I have a little canvas I set up in my garage so I can do the spray paint, but I've also got Procreate for the iPad. And like, I've just been loving that app, like digital, and like you can download like certain brushes and stuff and like still make graffiti art like in the style. And it's just like I love technology and like stuff like that. At first I was like, man, I'm like, you can't do graffiti digitally. I was like, that's whack. And then I tried it. I'm like, actually, this is really cool. And then you can take that and like implement it into your Photoshop and Illustrator. And there's just like, yeah, so many, endless. But yeah, I'm a huge fan. I love all different types of like art and creativity. Yeah, so it's like the sports is definitely skateboard, snowboarding, and then I'd say like graffiti, not only spray paint, but just like normal painting as well. And then, and then recently computer programming I've just been getting into and loving. I love technology, and I think it's also important for like with music nowadays, like technology is like so fast. I think that's how you stay relevant is by keeping up with like the recent technology and like plugins and stuff like that. Cause I noticed that I was just like you listen to music, like electronic music in like the 2010s, and it was just like, you can tell like there's been a huge jump in technology in the last 10 years for audio. And it's like, it's just so important to keep up with that.
So with that said, what are some of the trends that you see evolving into the future, or what are some of the cutting edge things that you're looking at now?
I think the one that has me the most interested right now, I think, is mixing in surround sound for
like octaphonic or quadraphonic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, both of those. And Logic just had that new update where they've added like an intuitive way to start mixing in that way. And I think that's like, yeah, the future. It's going to be so awesome. Like when we have clubs that are in surround sound and you can like have a sound go around your head. Like I really think that that is definitely like the way forward right now and has me the most excited. And then I think too, like Serum, the customizing your own wavetables, I think that too is just like the way forward right now. You know, it's just like so many people, there's so many producers out there now, and like Serum is probably the most popular synth. You know, like those wavetables that come in Serum or come in Massive, they've been used so much in so many different types of music. So it's just like designing your own wavetables is, I think, that next step on making like unique sound design.
So for anybody who doesn't already know your music or is not already a part of your social networks, what are the best links and platforms to connect with you on?
Awesome. I'd say for music, Spotify is my personal favorite. It'll be Laika Beats on Spotify, but I'm on all streaming platforms to be found out as well. Instagram is definitely probably the best social media to reach me at personally. And then I've really been trying to promote and get started on TikTok. I've been actually doing these like videos on TikTok where I kind of show how I'll like start like a beat. You know, I'll be like, all right, this was the melody I came up with, and then in the next clip I'll have me on the drum pads and like playing the drums and the 808 bass like over that, and kind of showing like that initial like process. So like I've really been enjoying TikTok lately. You know, like there's definitely, just like with anything else, like there's a lot of junk, but there is a lot of good resources on TikTok too. And like if you plug into like the right content creators, you can learn so much and get like nice little tidbits. So it's like, yeah, I've definitely lately, I feel like I've been kind of vibing with TikTok the most. And I think that's probably I feel like the way forward. Like video content, I feel like is definitely like the future for marketing and social media.
Absolutely. I mean, video not that long ago used to be just horrible quality and unstreamable because the internet was slow. And, you know, in just one lifetime, things have changed so much. So on TikTok, are you editing those videos? And what's the duration of a video? I think TikTok's pretty short, but I'm not that active on TikTok.
Yeah, I believe TikTok is 1 minute. So yeah, it's definitely like really short. So it's definitely like, it's kind of a challenge, you know, like getting those parts to fit, but still having like also a good section of the song to like kind of show off at the same time. So but it's like, it's cool. Then it's like, it's another one of those things where I feel like limiting yourself can really help you creatively. Whereas like YouTube, you can put up like whatever video long, you know, like I could show a song made from like start to finish. But like I feel like I've never wanted to do that. I don't think that's a good way to learn. Like I always like think back to this YouTuber who's his name's Boondock. He's a hip hop producer, and like he didn't really make tutorial videos. Instead, he just had like clips. You know, one clip he'd be playing the drums, next clip he'd have maracas recording that, the next clip he'd have a synthesizer just playing that. And like it kind of showed me, I'm like, oh, like these are the steps he like takes, you know, to like get his 16 bar loop rolling, you know, just like, and it was like, that's what I need to like, you need to like design like a schedule almost.
The last question is for you, open-ended. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a new single coming out next Friday. It's called Don't Give a Fuck. And it was actually, it's a banger track. And it's like, I try to make it like a banger for the ladies. It's we got a female rapper on it. And I don't know, I think it's just something I've never done before. I'm like really excited about. But yeah, like I showed like my girlfriend and like my manager's girlfriend, and like it seems like definitely the ladies have like responded like really well to it. And like that's what I was going for. It was like, because I feel like a lot of like bangers are like very masculine, you know, so like I kind of wanted to make like a banger for the ladies. And
nice.
Yeah, and I think that one's is actually going to be the last one for the year. But the plans for next year is I'll be dropping a single every 3 weeks for the entire year. And yeah, just going to try to keep it consistent. We've been playing around with that the last 3 months, just releasing a single every 3 to 4 weeks. And it's just went so well. It's like the singles just do so well. When I've tried to do like albums or EPs, I don't know. It's like, oh, like it seems like one track does really well and the other ones kind of get ignored, you know? And then but the singles are just strong like every time. So yeah, we've decided we're going to stop the EPs and albums and kind of just go singles all year next year.
Interesting. And I've seen some artists take the approach of releasing singles, but then in the end it forms an album. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I kind of did that with the album too this summer. I released it in June, but like the 3 previous months, I released like 4 tracks. You know, I'm like, here's track 1, here's track 2, track 3, track 4, and then dropped the whole album at the end of it. And yeah, I think that's a really good technique too. I've noticed that a lot. Like labels are definitely moving that direction. Like when they release an EP now, it's like they release like a song a week for a month, and then it's like, and then you have an EP built like at the end of the month. And yeah, definitely that feels like that's where the music industry is going right now for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. Somehow it seems to work on Spotify for some reason or another.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like, I feel like Spotify is like really dependent on like algorithms. It must be like something in their algorithm. Like I feel like social media, I've heard too, is like if you're posting regularly, then like more people, then they start like showing it to more people and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I feel like maybe Spotify does that too.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see how it goes next year for you with all those singles. Do you have them already made, or is this something that you're going to kind of set that goal and put your feet to the fire and you got to make a song in the next 3 weeks or else?
So it's a little half and half. I have enough right now to get me to like July, but yeah, I need to start making music to fill out the rest of next year.
Well, I love that you set that goal and that you've got to figure out how to get there, but you're pushing yourself to create and put out more music. So that's wonderful. Definitely.
I've always felt like I do really good under pressure. So I feel like, yeah, another good technique is like always I keep a journal, and like I always like write down goals, and then I read like past entries. I'm like, am I holding to these goals? I just feel like when I'm under pressure, I don't know, something happens and I perform a little better. I think like that's why I like playing live music too. I've never really gotten like nervous or like stage fright before, because well, maybe I am, but like I consider it like it's pressure, you know? But that pressure, it makes me, I was like, all right, I can't mess up. Like I just, you know, like I got to get it. So I like putting myself under pressure. I feel like I kind of get really good results that way.
Nice. And is it like the time deadline, that the urgency that forces you to create?
Yeah, most definitely. Because I feel like with any art, you know, like one of the things that used to happen to me before was just like, you know, I could never like finalize a track. I was like, oh no, like I would just obsess about like these little details, you know, and like just keep adding stuff or keep deleting stuff or just remixing it over and over and never be happy. And then like now it's just so nice. It's just like to have like a cutoff. And that's why having like a manager is nice too, you know, because they also hold you in check too. You know, they like check in with you, like you got to have those tracks done this week, you know, and you're just like, yeah, like I got to go get those done.
That's awesome. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for your time today and sharing, kind of busting open your Logic projects and walking me and the listeners through how you create and some of the tools that you use. And I really appreciate your music and putting it out there, and just the fact that you're such a multi-dimensional artist, that you're creating programs, that you're making visual art, music. I love what you're creating and excited for what you create in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy what you have going on, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. So thank you so much.
way you touch the flow when you drop it.
You've been listening to the Freio Music Podcast with Michael Morahan. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to share this podcast everywhere. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.
Freio Music, Freio Music, Freio Music, Freio Music. You are listening to Freio Music.